Christmas Eve. While the world was lighting candles and wrapping gifts, she lay bleeding in the snow, abandoned behind enemy lines. Her radio was silent, her squad was gone, and the enemy base loomed less than 2 kilometers away, glowing through a whiteout storm. They assumed the blizzard would finish her. They assumed no one hunts in a snowstorm. They were wrong. By dawn, the base would fall silent, not from bombs, not from an assault team, but from one woman they had already buried. The helicopter banked hard over the tree line. Snow pelted the windshield in horizontal sheets. Sergeant Kate Morrison checked her rifle for the 3rd time, more from habit than necessity. The weapon was clean. It was always clean. 5 minutes to LZ, the pilot announced through the headset. Around her, the rest of Bravo team shifted in their harnesses. Lieutenant Hayes scrolled through mission parameters on his tablet. Corporal Davis tapped his boot against the floor, nervous energy burning through him like it always did before insertion. Private Chen stared at the roof, headphones in, eyes closed. Kate said nothing. She never did before drops. They called her Frost, not because of her demeanor, though that fit, but because of what happened to targets once she acquired them. The nickname had followed her from sniper school, where instructors waited for her to fail. Women don't last in long-range precision courses. The washout rate proves it. She graduated 2nd in her class, would have been 1st, but Hayes beat her by 3 points on the final evaluation. Tonight's mission was supposed to be routine. Establish overwatch on grid sector 773. Monitor enemy supply routes through the valley. Report convoy movements. Extract at dawn. Standard reconnaissance. Nothing complicated. The helicopter descended through cloud cover. Kate glimpsed the valley below, a white void punctured by distant lights. The enemy forward operating base sat nestled in the eastern ridge, its generator hum barely audible over the storm. "Weather's getting worse," the co-pilot said. His voice carried an edge. Hayes leaned forward. "We're go unless command says otherwise." The radio crackled. Static. Then, silence. "Say again, command?" Hayes keyed his mic. "Bravo 2-6, requesting weather update." More static. The connection sputtered and died. "UAV feeds down," Davis reported, checking his tablet. "Lost the satellite link." Chen opened his eyes. "That normal? In this soup?" The pilot adjusted altitude. "Yeah, we get through this insertion. You'll be on your own till the storm passes." Kate watched Hayes' jaw tighten. Mission protocol said abort if communication failed before insertion. But protocols were guidelines. Hayes had a reputation for completing objectives. "Set us down," he decided. "We'll establish overwatch and reassess at dawn." The helicopter touched ground in a clearing 3 clicks west of the target zone. Snow swirled into the cabin as the door slid open. Kate felt the cold bite through her thermal layers. -15 Celsius. Factor in wind chill. Closer to -30. Bravo team deployed into the storm. The helicopter lifted off immediately, its rotor wash creating a temporary whiteout. When visibility returned, they were alone. "Frost, take point," Hayes ordered. "Chen, your rear security." Kate moved forward, her boots crunching through fresh powder. The world reduced itself to 10 meters of visibility. Beyond that, nothing but white static. Her thermal scope cut through the storm somewhat, but even infrared struggled against this level of precipitation. They traveled in silence, weapons ready, formation tight. The route Hayes had plotted would bring them to an elevated position overlooking the supply road. From there, Kate could establish a hide and begin observation. Except the route was wrong. Kate spotted it first: boot prints in the snow, too fresh to be buried. She raised her fist. The team froze. Hayes moved up beside her. "What is it?" She pointed. The prints were military issue, maybe an hour old. Multiple tracks, heading northeast, toward them. "Patrol," Hayes breathed. "They shouldn't be this far out." Kate's instinct screamed. Enemy patterns were predictable. Patrols didn't venture far from the base in weather like this, unless they knew something. "We're compromised," she said quietly. The ambush erupted from 3 sides. Muzzle flashes lit the storm. Rounds snapped past Kate's head. She dropped and rolled, bringing her rifle up, but the range was too close for her scope. Davis returned fire with his carbine. Chen went down immediately, hit in the shoulder. "Break contact," Hayes shouted. "Move." Kate laid down covering fire as the team scattered. She saw Hayes drag Chen toward a depression in the terrain. Davis sprinted left, trying to flank. The enemy pressed forward, dark shapes in the white, methodical and coordinated. Then, her leg went numb. Kate looked down. Blood spread across her thigh, black in the dim light. The round had punched through the outer muscle, missing bone but severing something important. She tried to stand, her leg buckled. "Frost is hit," Davis's voice, distant through the storm. More gunfire. Hayes triggered a smoke grenade. Purple haze mixed with snow. Kate crawled toward cover, a fallen tree, half buried in a drift. Every meter felt like kilometers. Her hands found bark. She pulled herself behind the trunk just as another burst tore through the air where she'd been. Exfil. Exfil. Hayes was on the radio, screaming for extraction. Kate applied pressure to her wound. The cold helped blood flow slowed in extreme temperatures. She fished a tourniquet from her kit and cinched it above the injury. Pain bloomed white-hot, then faded to a dull roar. The helicopter was coming back. She could hear the rotors now, faint but growing louder. Hayes and Davis reached her position. Chen was unconscious, slung between them. "Can you move?" Hayes asked. Kate tested her leg. It held weight, barely. "I can." "We need to go now," Davis interrupted. Incoming fire had intensified. The enemy knew they were pinned. Hayes looked at Kate, then at Chen, then at the helicopter, already visible through the trees, struggling to maintain altitude in the wind. The calculation happened in his eyes. "Get Chen to the bird," he told Davis. "What about?" "That's an order." Davis hesitated. Then he and Hayes hauled Chen toward the landing zone. Kate tried to follow. Her leg gave out after 3 steps. She went down hard, face first into the snow. When she looked up, the helicopter was lifting off. Hayes stood in the open door, backlit by the cabin lights. His expression was unreadable. Then he reached for the door controls. Kate raised her hand. The door slid shut. The helicopter banked away into the storm, its lights disappearing within seconds. She was alone. Kate lay in the snow and listened to the helicopter fade. The sound of the rotors merged with the wind, then vanished entirely. Only the storm remained, howling through the trees like something alive and hungry. She waited for the second pass. Standard protocol: if one soldier gets left behind, you orbit and attempt recovery, even under fire, especially under fire. The helicopter didn't return. Enemy voices carried through the darkness. Slavic inflection, probably Russian or Ukrainian contractors. They were conducting a sweep, searching for bodies. Kate pressed herself flat against the ground as a flashlight beam passed 3 meters to her left. Her radio was clipped to her vest. She reached for it slowly, careful not to make sound. "Bravo 2-6, this is Frost," she whispered into the mic. "I'm still combat effective. Request immediate exfil." Static answered. "Hayes, I know you can hear me. My position is compromised, but I can evade. Circle back." Nothing. She switched frequencies. Tried the emergency channel, then the command net. Every frequency was dead. They'd cut her off. The voices grew closer. Kate saw 2 figures materialize from the storm soldiers in heavy winter gear, rifles up, scanning methodically. One of them said something into his own radio, the other laughed. They thought the Americans had all escaped. Kate controlled her breathing, in through the nose, out through the mouth, slow and measured. Her sniper training had covered this: how to become part of the terrain, how to let pursuers pass within arm's reach without seeing you. The soldiers walked past her position. One boot came down half a meter from her head. She didn't move. After they passed, Kate gave them 2 full minutes to clear the area. Then she rolled onto her back and stared up at the falling snow. The cold was already working its way into her core. The tourniquet had stopped the major bleeding, but her body was shutting down non-essential functions to preserve heat. She had maybe 2 hours before hypothermia became irreversible. 2 hours to make a choice. Kate could stay put, dig into the snow, create an insulated shelter, wait for morning. If she survived the night, she might evade enemy patrols long enough to reach friendly lines. 30 kilometers south, through mountains, in a blizzard. With a bullet hole in her leg, she assessed the odds: 5% survival rate. Or, she could move toward the enemy base. The thought arrived, fully formed, complete, and clear. The base was less than 2 kilometers away. In this weather, its defenders would be concentrated inside, minimal external security. They'd never expect an attack during a whiteout, especially not from a wounded soldier they didn't know existed. Kate pulled out her personal medical kit. She had 1 syringe of morphine left kept against regulations, because she'd learned that sometimes protocol and reality diverged. She jabbed it into her thigh and felt the pain recede to a manageable level. Then she began stripping gear. The rucksack went first. Too heavy, too visible. She kept only what mattered: rifle, ammunition, knife, water, and a single fragmentation grenade. Her thermal scope was damaged, probably from the fall, so she detached it and left it in the snow. She kept the radio, even though it was silent. Sometimes equipment failure was temporary. Kate checked her weapon one more time. 17 rounds in the magazine, 1 in the chamber. 48 rounds in her remaining mags. 66 total. 66 shots to take down a forward operating base. The math wasn't good. But the math had never been good for her. Not when they told her women couldn't make it through sniper school. Not when her instructors assigned her the worst equipment and longest shifts. Not when Hayes picked her for his team but never quite trusted her with critical shots. She'd spent her entire career being underestimated. Tonight, that would be her weapon. Kate rose to her feet. Her legs screamed, but the morphine dulled it to background noise. She oriented herself using the distant glow of the base, a faint smudge of light through the storm, barely visible. 2 kilometers. She began walking. The first 100 meters nearly killed her. Kate's leg locked up twice, the damaged muscle refusing commands from her brain. Each time, she forced it to comply through sheer will, leaning on her rifle like a crutch, dragging herself forward through drifts that reached her waist. Snow accumulated on her shoulders and back. Her thermal signature became indistinguishable from the landscape, a ghost moving through white static. She'd learned this trick in Alaska during advanced winter warfare training. The instructors called it becoming the cold. You stopped fighting the environment and let it absorb you. Your body temperature dropped. Your metabolism slowed. You entered a state between life and death, suspended in the moment. Kate had spent 2 days in that state once, dug into a snowbank, waiting for a training target to expose himself. When she finally took the shot, the evaluators couldn't believe she'd survived. They'd assumed she'd abandoned the exercise. She remembered what the lead instructor had said. "Frost, you don't quit, you don't freeze, you just wait." She was done waiting. A memory surfaced as she walked. Basic training, week 4. The drill sergeant had pulled her aside after a particularly brutal ruck march. "You know why they don't want women in combat?" he'd asked. Not hostile, just curious. Kate had been too tired to answer. Because when men get hurt, they think about going home. When women get hurt, they think about everything they had to do to get here in the first place. Makes you dangerous. At the time, she'd thought he was full of shit. Now, moving through the storm with a hole in her leg and 66 rounds between her and survival, she understood. Turning back wasn't an option. It had never been an option. The base lights grew brighter. Kate dropped to a crouch and surveyed her approach route. The perimeter was barely visible through the snow chain-link fence, topped with razor wire, guard towers at each corner. Beyond that, a cluster of prefabricated buildings arranged around a central courtyard. She counted 3 external lights still burning. The rest had either been extinguished or buried by snow accumulation. Smart, less light meant less visibility for potential attackers, but it also meant the guards would have limited sight lines. Kate circled to the north side, where the terrain sloped upward. Approaching from high ground was textbook assault doctrine, which meant the defenders expected at least during a storm. No one attacked uphill in a blizzard. She found a position behind a cluster of rocks and settled in to observe. This was her element. The wait, the calculation, the precise moment when patience transformed into violence. Through her rifle's scope iron sights now, since the thermal unit was gone, she watched the base, 2 guards visible on the eastern tower, both stamping their feet against the cold, rifles slung. They weren't expecting trouble. The fence had a blind spot where the northeast corner tower's field of view was blocked by a supply shed. Kate marked it mentally. That would be her entry point. But first, she needed to disable the towers. Standard forward operating base defensive doctrine placed tower guards on overlapping fields of fire. If one guard went down, the others would see it immediately. But in a snowstorm, with visibility reduced to almost nothing, those fields of fire became theoretical. Kate checked her ammunition. 66 rounds. The base probably held 20 to 30 soldiers, plus whatever auxiliary personnel were stationed here. Cooks, medics, logistics staff. She was outnumbered 40 to 1, minimum. The numbers should have been terrifying. Instead, Kate felt something like calm. The mission parameters were simple. Eliminate enemy combat effectiveness, disrupt command structure, survive until dawn, or don't survive. She'd already been left for dead. Everything after this moment was borrowed time. Kate adjusted her position and settled the rifle into her shoulder. The cold had seeped through her gloves, making her fingers stiff. She flexed them slowly, working blood back into the digits. Marksmanship required fine motor control. Rush the shot, miss the target. In sniper school, they drilled it into her. Slow is smooth, smooth is fast, fast is deadly. She breathed out and let the crosshairs settle on the nearest guard tower. One shot, then chaos. Then she'd find out if decades of training were enough to overcome impossible odds. Kate thought about Hayes one more time. About the door sliding shut. About Chen's unconscious body being dragged towards safety while she lay in the snow. Then she stopped thinking about them entirely. This wasn't about revenge. Revenge was emotional, imprecise. This was about sending a message that would echo through every briefing room, every command post, every decision made in the heat of combat. The message was simple. Leaving someone behind has consequences. Kate's finger found the trigger. The guard in her sights had turned his back, presenting a perfect silhouette against the base lights. She exhaled slowly and made her weapon an extension of her will. Then, she pulled the trigger. The guard dropped without a sound, disappearing from the tower as if he'd simply ceased to exist. Kate worked the bolt, chambering another round, and shifted her aim before his partner could react. 2 seconds. That was the window. Most soldiers needed 3 seconds to process unexpected stimuli and respond. Kate had 2 seconds to eliminate the second guard before alarms spread through the base. The second guard turned toward where his partner had been standing. His mouth opened, probably to call out. Kate's bullet arrived first, entering just above his collarbone and severing the brainstem. He collapsed against the tower railing and went still. 64 rounds remaining. Kate waited. No alarms, no sudden activity from the base. The snow swallowed sound, muffling everything beyond 10 meters. The other guard towers hadn't noticed. She moved to her next position, a shallow depression 30 meters closer to the fence. Her leg protested with every step, but the morphine held. She had maybe an hour before the drug wore off, and pain returned in full force. The western tower was next. Kate settled into her shooting position and acquired the target through her scope. One guard visible, the second somewhere inside the tower structure. This shot was more difficult. Longer range, wind factor increased, and the guard was partially concealed behind a support beam. Kate calculated holdover, breathing rate, heart rhythm, every variable had to align. She fired. The bullet struck the guard in the temple. He slumped forward, his rifle clattering against the tower floor. The sound carried across the base, not loud, but distinct enough to be noticed if anyone was paying attention. Kate counted to 10. No response. She worked the bolt and waited for the second guard to investigate. Human nature was predictable. Soldiers heard unusual sounds, they checked on their partners. Protocol demanded it. 30 seconds passed. Then, a figure emerged from inside the tower, leaning over the fallen guard. Kate's bullet took him through the chest. He fell backward into the darkness. 62 rounds. 3 towers down. One remained the southern position, directly opposite her current location. Kate couldn't get an angle from here. She'd have to move around the perimeter, which meant exposing herself to potential observation from inside the base buildings. Or she could go through. The fence blind spot she'd identified earlier was now unguarded. Kate approached at a crouch, scanning for motion sensors or cameras. She found neither. This was a forward operating base, not a permanent installation. Security was human-dependent. The fence had a gate secured with a standard military padlock. Kate drew her knife and worked the blade into the locking mechanism. It wasn't subtle, but it didn't need to be. The lock popped open after 15 seconds of applied torque. She was inside. The base was larger than she'd estimated from satellite imagery. Besides the main building cluster, there were storage units, a vehicle depot, and what looked like a communications array mounted on the tallest structure. That would be her priority target after neutralizing remaining security. Kate moved between buildings, using shadows and snowdrifts for concealment. The morphine was fading. Pain crept back into her leg, sharp and insistent. She gritted her teeth and pushed forward. The southern guard tower was accessible via an external ladder. Kate climbed slowly, testing each rung before putting weight on it. The metal was covered in ice, treacherous under her gloves. Her injured leg barely functioned, forcing her to pull herself up using upper body strength alone. At the top, she found both guards inside the small enclosed space, huddled around a portable heater. They hadn't noticed the other towers going silent. Why would they? Communication between posts probably relied on radio, and their radios were set to standby to conserve battery in the cold. Kate drew her knife. This needed to be silent. Gunfire from inside the tower would definitely be noticed. She opened the door and moved before either guard could process what was happening. The knife entered the first guard's throat, just below the jaw, angled upward into the brain. He died before his body understood it should fall. The second guard lunged for his rifle. Kate caught his arm, redirected his momentum, and drove the knife between his ribs. He gasped, eyes wide with shock. She held him there until the light faded. 62 rounds remaining, 0 shots fired. Kate lowered the bodies and took a moment to assess her situation. From this vantage point, she could see the entire base layout. The main building showed signs of activity, lights on in several windows, shadows moving past. Most of the base personnel were probably inside, sheltering from the storm. Perfect. She checked her watch. 11:40 p.m. Christmas Eve was almost over. In 20 minutes, it would be Christmas Day. And if the enemy followed typical patterns, there would be a shift change at midnight. Guards would rotate. Someone would eventually check the towers. Kate had 20 minutes to disable the base's command structure. She descended the ladder and moved toward the main building. The entrance was visible from her position, a double door with light spilling from a small window. She saw 2 figures inside, stationed just beyond the threshold. Entry security. Going through the front was suicide. Kate circled to the rear of the building, searching for alternate access. She found a side door near what looked like a kitchen. Steam vented from an exhaust fan, and she could smell cooking food. The door was unlocked. Kate eased it open and slipped inside. Heat hit her like a physical force. Her frozen body reacted immediately, muscles loosening, vision clearing. For a moment, she felt almost human again. Then she heard voices approaching. Kate pressed herself into an alcove as 2 soldiers walked past, carrying empty trays back to the kitchen. They were talking about the weather, complaining about extended duty shifts. Neither looked in her direction. When they disappeared into the kitchen, Kate moved deeper into the building. She was in a corridor now, doors on either side leading to barracks, storage rooms, and armory. At the far end, a staircase ascended to the 2nd floor. That's where command would be. Upper level, central position, maximum visibility over the compound. Kate started climbing. The 2nd floor was different, quieter. The walls were lined with tactical maps, radio equipment, and status boards tracking supply movements. Kate paused at the top of the stairs and listened. 3 voices, 2 men, 1 woman, speaking Russian, which Kate understood reasonably well from language training. They were discussing the storm's impact on tomorrow's scheduled convoy. Weather service says it clears by 0600, one of the men said. We can still make the window. If the roads are passable, the woman replied. Last storm buried the pass completely. Kate moved along the wall until she found the source, an office at the end of the hall, door ajar. Through the gap, she saw 2 men in officer insignia and a woman in civilian clothes, probably a logistics coordinator. They were studying a map spread across a desk. No guards outside the room. Sloppy. They felt safe here, deep inside their own perimeter. Kate's options narrowed to 2. Eliminate them now and lose the element of surprise, or bypass them and continue mapping the base's layout. The tactical part of her brain ran calculations. Command staff eliminated meant chaos in the ranks, but it also meant immediate alert status. She decided to wait. There were still pieces of the puzzle missing: the communications array, the armory location, guard rotation schedules. Kate backed away from the office and continued her reconnaissance. She found a storage room and slipped inside, closing the door behind her. The space was small, crowded with filing cabinets and equipment crates. She used the darkness to check her leg wound. Blood had soaked through the tourniquet. Not good. The cold had slowed circulation, but now that she was in heated environment, her body was trying to compensate. She tightened the tourniquet another notch and felt her foot go numb below the knee. That bought her maybe another hour before tissue damage became permanent. Kate searched the storage room and found what she needed: a duty roster pinned to a corkboard. She memorized the patrol schedule, guard positions, shift changes. Midnight rotation would bring fresh soldiers to the towers. When they found bodies instead of living guards, the base would go to full alert. She had 18 minutes. Kate left the storage room and moved toward the communications array. The roof access was marked on an emergency exit plan mounted near the stairwell. She climbed to the 3rd floor, found the ladder leading up, and ascended into the cold. Outside again. The wind nearly knocked her off the ladder. Kate gripped the rungs and pulled herself onto the roof. Snow had drifted against the communications equipment, a satellite dish, several antennae, and a junction box housing the base's network infrastructure. She approached the junction box and opened the access panel. Inside, fiber optic cables, Ethernet connections, and power lines formed a complex web. Kate pulled one of the fragmentation grenades from her vest. She'd been saving it for an emergency. This qualified. She armed the grenade, wedged it into the junction box, and closed the panel. The timer gave her 4 minutes, enough time to get clear and reach her next objective. Kate descended the ladder and returned to the 2nd floor. The voices from the command office had grown louder, an argument about vehicle maintenance schedules. She passed the office without stopping and headed for the ground floor. The armory was her final target. Disable the base's weapons cache, and even if soldiers responded to the alarm, they'd be limited to whatever they carried personally. Kate found the armory on the building's east side, behind a reinforced door with a keypad lock. She didn't have the code. Kate examined the door frame. Reinforced, but not blast-proof. She had 1 grenade left. Using it here meant no backup for emergencies. But sometimes you had to spend resources to achieve objectives. She pulled the pin, set the grenade against the door's locking mechanism, and moved to cover. The explosion was louder than she'd anticipated. The blast echoed through the building, immediately followed by shouts and running footsteps. Alarms began blaring, not the smooth electronic tone of modern systems, but old mechanical klaxons that rattled the walls. So much for stealth. Kate rushed through the smoking doorway into the armory. Rifles lined the walls, ammunition crates stacked floor to ceiling. She grabbed a jerry can of diesel fuel stored in the corner, splashed it across the ammunition, and used an emergency flare to ignite the fuel. Fire spread fast. Within seconds, the room was an inferno. Kate retreated into the hallway as the first ammunition began cooking off, bullets exploding randomly inside the blaze. Soldiers poured into the corridor, confused and disorganized. Most weren't fully armed, some carried only sidearms, others just knives. They'd been caught in the middle of downtime, unprepared for combat inside their own base. Kate raised her rifle and started firing. The first 3 soldiers went down before they understood where the shots were coming from. Kate moved laterally after each shot, never staying in the same position. She dropped the 4th soldier as he tried to bring his pistol up. The 5th managed to return fire, his rounds going wide as Kate's bullet took him in the chest. 57 rounds remaining. The communications array exploded on the roof, right on schedule. The blast shook the building. Lights flickered and died as power systems failed. Emergency lighting kicked in dim red bulbs that created more shadows than illumination. Perfect conditions for a hunter. Kate moved through the chaos like a ghost. Soldiers ran past her position without seeing her, focused on the fire, the darkness, the confusion. She selected targets carefully. Anyone carrying a rifle. Anyone who looked like they were trying to establish order. Leadership elimination. Disable the enemy's ability to coordinate and they became a mob. Another 6 soldiers fell. Kate reloaded, her hands moving through the magazine change by pure muscle memory. 51 rounds. The base was falling apart. She could hear it in the voices, in the random gunfire, in the way orders were shouted but not followed. No one knew where the attack was coming from. No one knew how many attackers there were. And outside, the snowstorm raged on, cutting them off from reinforcement or escape. Kate reached the stairwell leading to the command office. Time to finish this. The command office was empty. Kate swept through the room quickly, rifle up, checking corners. The map was still spread across the desk. A radio crackled with confused transmissions, soldiers calling for orders that weren't coming. But the 3 people she'd seen earlier were gone. Smart. When the shooting started, they'd evacuated to a secondary position. Kate grabbed the radio. All units, this is command. Fall back to the vehicle depot and establish defensive perimeter. She used the woman's voice patterns, mimicking the accent and cadence she'd heard earlier, close enough to pass in the chaos. Several voices acknowledged the order. Through the window, Kate watched soldiers streaming out of the main building toward the depot. Exactly what she wanted, concentration of forces in a predictable location. She left the office and made her way to the roof access. The communications equipment was destroyed, still burning despite the snow. Kate positioned herself behind the satellite dish and established a firing position overlooking the depot. From here, she had perfect visibility. Soldiers gathered in the open area between vehicles, trying to form ranks, searching for threats. They expected an attack from outside the fence. Kate started shooting. The first soldier fell. Then the second. Panic spread through the group as they realized the fire was coming from inside the base, from above. They scattered, seeking cover behind vehicles and equipment crates. But Kate had spent years training for exactly this scenario. Moving targets, wind conditions, elevation differential. Her instructors called it battlefield geometry, the mathematical relationship between shooter, target, and environment. She worked the bolt, acquired a new target, fired, repeated. Each shot was deliberate. No wasted ammunition, no panic fire, just precision application of force at range. 45 rounds. The soldiers in the depot began returning fire, but they were shooting blind. Muzzle flashes lit the darkness, bullets ricocheting off the roof near Kate's position. She adjusted her firing point and continued engaging. 41 rounds. Someone in the depot was trying to organize a counter-assault. Kate identified him by the way other soldiers oriented toward his position. She put 2 rounds through his center mass and watched the group dissolve back into chaos. 39 rounds. The fire from the armory had spread to adjacent buildings. Flames climbed walls despite the snow, fed by stored fuel and supplies. The base was dying, consuming itself from within. Kate's radio crackled. A new voice, different from the others, calm, authoritative. Unknown shooter, this is Colonel Petrov. I know you're listening. Kate didn't respond, but she stopped firing. You've made your point, Petrov continued. Whatever your mission objective, you've achieved it. We're combat ineffective. Stand down and we can negotiate terms. Through her scope, Kate scanned the depot area. She spotted him, an older man in officer's uniform, standing behind a transport truck. He held his sidearm at his side, not threatening, not surrendering. I'm giving you 60 seconds to respond, he said. After that, I'm ordering my men to burn this base completely and disappear into the mountains. Whatever intelligence you're looking for will be destroyed. Kate considered. The smart play was to accept. Mission accomplished, enemy neutralized, extraction possible if she could reach friendly lines by dawn. But that wasn't why she was here. She keyed her radio. This isn't about intelligence. Petrov paused. When he spoke again, his voice carried surprise. You're American, a woman. Sergeant Kate Morrison, United States Army, call sign Frost. Sergeant Morrison, we don't have any record of American forces operating in this sector. If this is an authorized, it's not authorized. Kate shifted her aim slightly, settling the crosshairs on Petrov's position. Your patrol ambushed my team 3 hours ago. They left me for dead. Understanding dawned in Petrov's voice. And now, you're here. Now, I'm here. What do you want? Good question. What did she want? Revenge seemed small compared to what she'd done. Justice didn't apply in a war zone. Survival was guaranteed if she just walked away now. Kate thought about Hayes, about Chen, about every instructor who'd told her she didn't belong, about every mission where she'd proven herself and still found doubt in her team's eyes. I want you to remember, she said finally. Every briefing, every patrol, every time you plan an operation, remember what one person can do when you underestimate them. Is that all? No. Kate's finger tightened on the trigger. I want you to tell them. Tell every soldier, every commander, every decision maker who thinks leaving someone behind is acceptable. Tell them about tonight." Petrov was silent for a moment. Then, "I'll tell them." Kate fired. The bullet struck the truck's fuel tank. Diesel ignited, creating a fireball that lit the entire depot. Soldiers scattered as vehicles began exploding in a chain reaction. Petrov disappeared into the flames. Whether he survived, Kate didn't know. Didn't matter. She delivered her message. The explosions continued for 15 minutes. Secondary blasts as fuel stores ignited, ammunition cooked off, structural supports failed. Kate watched from the roof as the forward operating base transformed into a blazing wreck. Around her, the snowstorm finally began to ease. Wind velocity dropped. Visibility extended to 20 meters, then 30. The blizzard that had enabled her infiltration was passing. Dawn wasn't far off. Kate descended from the roof and moved through the burning base. Bodies lay scattered throughout, some from her shots, others caught in the fire and explosions. She didn't count them. Numbers didn't matter. In the command office, she found the map still intact despite the damage. She studied it carefully, memorizing routes, marking positions. Intelligence that might prove useful if she survived long enough to deliver it. Her leg had gone beyond pain into numbness. Kate checked the tourniquet and found the flesh below it had turned pale gray. Frostbite and circulation loss. Even if she made it out, she'd likely lose the leg below the knee. Small price. She gathered what supplies remained usable: a fresh radio, extra ammunition, magazines, a medical kit. The radio worked, surprisingly. Kate tuned it to the American frequency and keyed the mic. Any station, this is Bravo 26 Actual, requesting immediate casevac, over." Static. She tried again. "Bravo 26 Actual requesting extraction. I am 1 click north of enemy position at grid 773. Base is destroyed, enemy neutralized. How copy?" Still nothing. Kate switched to the emergency frequency. "Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Sergeant Kate Morrison, U.S. Army. I am combat effective but wounded and require extraction at first light." A voice crackled through. "Say again, did you say Kate Morrison?" "Affirmative." "Frost. From Bravo team." Long pause. "Frost, this is Overwatch 6. You're supposed to be KIA. Lieutenant Hayes reported you killed in action during the ambush." Kate felt something cold settle in her chest. Hayes reported wrong. "I'm alive." "Stand by." She waited. The radio stayed silent for 3 full minutes. Then a different voice came through, deeper, more authoritative. "Sergeant Morrison, this is Colonel Briggs. Confirm your identity with your service number." Kate recited it. "And your primary training instructor at Fort Benning?" "Master Sergeant Chen. No relation to Private Chen from my current team." "Jesus Christ." Briggs sounded shaken. "What's your current status?" "I've neutralized the enemy forward operating base at grid 773. Base is destroyed. Estimated 30 enemy Kia. I'm wounded but mobile. Requesting immediate extraction." "How did you never mind? We're launching birds now. Give me your exact location." Kate provided coordinates. "Frost, I need you to understand something. When Lieutenant Hayes reported you KIA, it was based on battlefield assessment. He believed you were dead. Do you copy?" Kate understood what he was really asking. Was she going to file charges, push for an investigation, destroy Hayes' career? "I copy," she said. "We can discuss the particulars later. Right now, I'd like to get off this mountain." "Roger that. ETA 20 minutes. Sit tight." Kate moved to the base perimeter and found a position with good visibility. The snow had stopped completely now. Stars were visible through breaks in the cloud cover. To the east, the first hint of dawn touched the horizon. Christmas morning. She thought about what people were doing right now. Waking up to open presents, making breakfast, calling family. Normal things in a normal world that felt impossibly distant from this burned-out base on a frozen mountain. Kate heard the helicopters before she saw them. 2 Blackhawks, running with full lights despite the tactical disadvantage. They weren't sneaking in, they were making a statement. The lead bird touched down 50 meters from her position. A medic jumped out, followed by Lieutenant Hayes. Hayes stopped when he saw her. His face went through several expressions: shock, relief, shame. Kate limped toward the helicopter. Hayes moved to help her. She waved him off. "Frost Eye," he started. "Not now, Lieutenant." The medic got her into the helicopter and immediately started working on her leg. The tourniquet came off. Blood flow returned in a painful rush. Kate gritted her teeth as the medic assessed the wound. "You're lucky," he said. "Another hour and you'd have lost it." "That's me," Kate replied. "Lucky." The second helicopter had landed near the base. A team of soldiers was already moving through the wreckage, documenting everything. Kate watched them work as her bird lifted off. Below, the base looked like something from an apocalypse. Scorched earth, twisted metal, bodies, all of it covered in pristine white snow, as if nature was trying to hide what had happened. But nature couldn't hide it, and Kate wouldn't let anyone forget. The medevac flight took 40 minutes. Kate spent most of it staring out the window at the mountains passing below, her mind running through the engagement step by step. The medic tried to start an IV. She refused. "I'm fine until we land." "Ma'am, you've lost a significant amount of blood." "I'm aware. And I'll be more aware if I stay conscious. No IV until we're on the ground." He looked at Hayes, who nodded. The medic backed off. Hayes sat across from her, silent. Finally, he spoke. "The ambush came from nowhere. We were scattered, taking fire from 3 sides. You went down, and you made a call," Kate interrupted. "I understand tactical decisions, Lieutenant. You had wounded, limited time, hostile forces closing. You prioritized the team." "I should have." "What? Gotten everyone killed, trying to carry me out? That would have been the correct call?" Hayes met her eyes. "I thought you were dead, Frost. I saw you go down, saw the blood. In that moment, with everything happening, I thought." "You thought wrong." "But I'm not interested in being right about this, Hayes. What's done is done." The helicopter began its descent. Through the window, Kate saw a field hospital, several large tents set up in a cleared area, with a landing pad marked by glowing chemical sticks. They touched down and the medic immediately got her onto a stretcher. Kate tried to protest, but her body overruled her mind. The adrenaline was wearing off. Exhaustion hit like a physical weight. She was wheeled into a treatment tent, where doctors descended on her with professional efficiency. Someone finally got that IV line in. Her leg was cleaned, examined, x-rayed. Fragments of the bullet were still inside, lodged against the femur. "Surgery within the hour," a doctor said. "You're lucky the bone wasn't shattered." There was that word again, lucky. Kate closed her eyes and let the medical team work. She was conscious of voices discussing her condition, hands moving with practiced precision. Somewhere in the background, she heard Colonel Briggs talking to another officer. 30 confirmed enemy Kia. The entire base command structure is gone. She did this alone? Apparently. "I've got a team on site now doing damage assessment. It's extensive. Whatever she did, it was thorough. I want a full debrief as soon as she's stable." "Yes, sir." Kate drifted. Time became fluid. At some point, she was moved to a surgical tent. The anesthesiologist appeared above her, mask in place. "Count backward from 10, he said. She made it to 7 before everything went dark. When Kate woke, it was afternoon. Not Christmas anymore, December 26th. She'd lost a day to surgery and recovery. Her leg was heavily bandaged, elevated on pillows. An IV line ran to her arm, feeding fluids and antibiotics. The tent was quiet except for the hum of generators and the soft sounds of other patients. A nurse noticed she was awake and came over. "Welcome back, Sergeant. How are you feeling?" "Like I got shot and then walked 2 kilometers through a blizzard." "That's about what happened, according to your chart." The nurse checked her vitals. "You're lucky. The surgeon said another hour and you would have lost the leg to necrosis." "Everyone keeps saying I'm lucky. Aren't you?" Kate considered. "I suppose that depends on your definition." Colonel Briggs arrived an hour later, accompanied by 2 intelligence officers and a woman in civilian clothes with JAG stenciled on her briefcase. Judge Advocate General, a lawyer. "Sergeant Morrison," Briggs said. "Glad to see you awake. How are you feeling?" "Ready to get out of this bed, sir." "That's not happening anytime soon. But we need to talk about what happened on that mountain." The intelligence officers set up a recording device. The JAG lawyer opened her briefcase and pulled out a legal pad. "This is an official debrief," Briggs continued. "Everything you say will be recorded and analyzed. Do you understand?" "Yes, sir." Then tell us, in your own words, exactly what happened from the moment your team was ambushed until extraction. Kate told them everything: the ambush, being left behind, her decision to assault the base, the infiltration, the firefight, the systematic destruction of enemy combat capability. She spoke for 40 minutes without interruption. The intelligence officers took notes. The lawyer watched her carefully, looking for inconsistencies. When she finished, the tent was silent. Finally, Briggs spoke. You neutralized an enemy forward operating base, alone, while wounded, in a blizzard, on Christmas Eve. Yes, sir. That's either the most impressive piece of combat action I've heard in 30 years, or the most reckless. Respectfully, sir, those aren't mutually exclusive. One of the intelligence officers leaned forward. Sergeant, you mentioned using enemy radio frequencies to misdirect their forces. How did you know their protocols? I didn't. I guessed based on standard doctrine and their behavior patterns. And the systematic elimination of command structure? That suggests advanced tactical training beyond standard sniper school. Kate met his eyes. It suggests I was motivated. The JAG lawyer spoke for the first time. Sergeant Morrison, I need to ask you directly. Do you believe Lieutenant Hayes deliberately abandoned you, or was it a battlefield decision made under extreme circumstances? There it was. The question that would determine whether Hayes faced charges. Kate took her time answering. She thought about Hayes, about the door sliding shut, about lying in the snow listening to the helicopter fade. She thought about the rage that had driven her forward through pain and cold, and she thought about what would happen if she said yes. Hayes would be investigated, possibly court-martialed, his career would end, and it would all be because Kate wanted someone to blame. It was a battlefield decision, she said finally. Made under extreme circumstances, with incomplete information. I don't agree with it, but I understand it. The lawyer made notes. For the record, you're not filing any charges or complaints regarding your treatment by Lieutenant Hayes or other members of Bravo team. No, ma'am. Briggs nodded. All right, we'll continue this debrief over the next few days as you recover. In the meantime, I'm putting you in for a Silver Star. Kate blinked. Sir? You single-handedly destroyed an enemy position and eliminated a significant threat to ongoing operations. That merits recognition. He stood. Get some rest, Sergeant. We'll talk more later. They filed out, leaving Kate alone with her thoughts. A Silver Star. The military's third highest decoration for valor. She wondered what her instructors from sniper school would say. The ones who doubted she belonged. The ones who'd whispered that women didn't have what it took. She wondered what Hayes would say when he found out. But mostly, she wondered if any of it mattered. The medal, the recognition, the official reports. All of it was just the military's way of fitting what happened into neat categories. What really mattered was simpler. She'd been left for dead, and she'd survived. Everything else was just paperwork. Kate spent 2 weeks in the field hospital before being cleared for transport to a military medical center in Germany. Her leg healed slowly but cleanly. The surgery had been successful, no permanent damage beyond scarring. She didn't see Hayes during that time. He'd been reassigned to different duties while the investigation into the ambush continued. Even though Kate wasn't filing charges, the Army had its own questions about how an entire team had been compromised. On her last day at the field hospital, Hayes appeared at her bedside. Frost. He stood awkwardly, holding his cap. I heard you're shipping out tomorrow. That's the plan. I wanted to. He trailed off, searching for words. I owe you an apology. Several apologies, actually. You don't owe me anything, Lieutenant. Yes, I do. What I did on that mountain leaving you, there's no excuse for it. Kate studied him. Hayes looked older than she remembered, tired. The confidence that had always surrounded him was gone. You made a call, she said. It was wrong, but you made it believing it was necessary. I've moved past it. Have you? She thought about that. I'm working on it. Hayes pulled up a chair and sat. Chen asked about you. He's recovering well. Wants to thank you. For what? For what you did. Taking down that base probably saved a lot of lives. The intelligence team found evidence they were planning a major offensive. Kate hadn't known that. The official debrief had focused on her actions, not the broader implications. There's something else, Hayes continued. The investigation found that the ambush was set up specifically for us. Someone leaked our mission parameters. The enemy knew we were coming. That explained the perfect positioning, the overwhelming force. Who leaked it? They're still working on that. But it means your team wasn't at fault for the tactical failure. We walked into a trap. Doesn't change what happened after. No, Hayes agreed. It doesn't. They sat in silence for a moment. Finally, Kate spoke. I'm not going to pretend this is fine, Hayes. What happened on that mountain changed things between us, but I'm also not going to let it define the rest of my career. I'm moving forward. Hayes nodded. I respect that. And for what it's worth, I'll never doubt you again. That's not worth much if we're not on the same team. We might be. Colonel Briggs is putting together a new unit, specialized reconnaissance. He asked if I'd recommend you. Kate felt something shift. A new unit meant new opportunities. Fresh start. What did you tell him? That you're the best sniper I've ever worked with, and that if he's smart, he'll make you team lead. After Hayes left, Kate sat with that information. A new unit, a leadership position, everything she'd worked toward, offered on the strength of one impossible night. But it wasn't just one night. It was years of training, of proving herself, of refusing to accept limitations that others wanted to place on her. The Christmas Eve mission had just made it visible. Kate arrived in Germany on a cold January morning. The medical center was modern, well-equipped, designed for long-term recovery. She underwent additional surgery to remove the last bullet fragments and began intensive physical therapy. Her roommate was another soldier, Captain Maria Rodriguez, recovering from an IED blast. They bonded over shared experiences and dark humor about military medicine. So you're the one, Maria said one evening as they worked through therapy exercises. The one what? The one who took down an entire base by herself on Christmas. It's all anyone talks about in the ward. Kate hadn't realized the story had spread. It wasn't an entire base. Close enough. You know they're writing you up for a Silver Star? So I heard. Maria studied her. You don't seem excited about it. I'm not sure what I feel about it. Try grateful. Most people who do what you did don't live to collect the medal. Kate couldn't argue with that. The physical therapy progressed well. By February, she was walking without assistance. By March, she could jog short distances. The doctors said she'd make a full recovery, though she'd always have a slight limp when tired. In April, she received orders for her new assignment. Just as Hayes had mentioned, she was being transferred to a specialized reconnaissance unit, officially designated Task Force Sentinel. Colonel Briggs would command, Hayes would be executive officer, and Kate would lead Alpha Team. She read the orders 3 times, making sure she understood correctly. Team lead, not assistant team lead, not second in command, lead. It was everything she'd worked for. The ceremony happened in May, back at Fort Bragg. Kate stood in her dress uniform, leg fully healed, and listened as General Morrison, no relation, despite the name, read the citation for her Silver Star. For gallantry in action against an enemy of the United States. Her family was there. Her father, retired Army himself, stood with tears in his eyes. Her mother gripped his arm. Her younger brother wore his ROTC uniform, looking at her with something like awe. Hayes stood in the audience, along with Chen and Davis. The rest of Task Force Sentinel was present. 2 soldiers she'd meet officially next week when she reported for duty. The general pinned the medal to her chest. The audience applauded. Cameras flashed. Kate stood at attention and thought about Christmas Eve. About snow and blood, and the moment she decided to stop being a victim and become a threat. That was the real medal. Not the Silver Star on her chest, but the knowledge that when everything went wrong, when she was abandoned and wounded and surrounded by enemies, she'd found a way to not just survive, but prevail. After the ceremony, reporters wanted interviews. Kate declined politely. The Army's Public Affairs Office had already released a carefully edited version of events, enough detail to be impressive, not enough to reveal operational security. She found Hayes near the reception area. He saluted, formal and precise. Congratulations, Sergeant Morrison. Kate returned the salute. Thank you, Lieutenant Hayes. It's Captain Hayes now, actually, promoted last week. Congratulations. They stood awkwardly, the past hanging between them. I meant what I said before, Hayes offered, about never doubting you. I'm looking forward to working together at Sentinel. Kate considered her next words carefully. Captain, I'm not going to forget what happened, but I'm also not going to let it poison what we do going forward. We're going to work together professionally, effectively. And if you ever have to make another impossible decision in the field, I trust you'll make the right call." "I will." "Then we're good." They shook hands. Not quite friends, not quite forgiven, but functional. Sometimes that was the best you could hope for. Kate reported to Task Force Sentinel on a Monday morning in June. The compound was isolated, surrounded by forest, designed for units that operated outside normal channels. Colonel Briggs met her at the gate. "Sergeant Morrison, welcome to Sentinel." "Thank you, sir. Happy to be here. Let me show you around." The compound was impressive. State-of-the-art training facilities, armory stocked with specialized equipment, dedicated intelligence section. Everything a reconnaissance unit needed to operate independently. Briggs walked her through each area, introducing key personnel. The unit was small, 4 teams of 6 soldiers each, plus support staff. Total strength under 40. "We're not a conventional unit," Briggs explained. "We take missions that fall outside normal operational parameters. Deep reconnaissance, surgical strikes, intelligence gathering in denied areas, unconventional warfare." "Exactly. Which means we need people who can think independently and operate with minimal support." He stopped and faced her. "People like you." They reached the team-ready room. Alpha Team was already assembled, 5 soldiers standing at attention. Hayes stood to the side. "Alpha Team," Briggs announced, "this is your new team leader, Sergeant Kate Morrison, call sign Frost. I expect you to give her the same respect and professionalism you'd give any team lead." The soldiers sounded off with their names and specialties. Kate memorized each one, noting their body language, their confidence levels, their equipment condition. First impressions mattered. After Briggs left, Kate addressed her team. "I know what you've heard. Christmas Eve. The base. All of it. I'm not going to pretend that's not part of my record, but it's not all of my record. And it's not what defines me as a team lead." She paused, making eye contact with each soldier. "What defines me is simple. I don't leave people behind. Ever. I expect the same from each of you. We're going into bad places to do dangerous things. Sometimes the mission will go sideways. Sometimes we'll be compromised. But we face it together, and we come out together." One of the soldiers, a younger man with corporal stripes, spoke up. "What if the situation demands we prioritize the mission over individual safety?" "Good question." Kate had thought about this extensively. "Then we make that call as a team," she said. "Not one person deciding who gets left behind. We assess, we discuss if possible, and we move forward with everyone's input. Clear?" "Clear, Sergeant." "Good. Now let's get to work." Over the following months, Alpha Team deployed on 6 missions. Each one pushed them harder, tested them more thoroughly. Kate proved herself not just as a shooter, but as a leader, someone who could plan operations, adapt to changing circumstances, and bring her team home intact. The nickname Frost evolved. It was no longer just about her shooting. It was about her demeanor under pressure, her ability to stay calm when everything went to hell. In October, they took a mission that eerily mirrored Christmas Eve. Deep insertion, hostile territory, minimal support. Except this time, Kate was prepared. Her team was prepared. When things went wrong, and they did, everyone knew their role. They completed the mission without casualties. After extraction, one of her team members, the corporal who'd asked about prioritizing missions, approached her. "Sergeant, I just wanted to say, I get it now. What you meant about coming out together. What changed your mind? Tonight, when we were pinned down and you could have ordered us to split up, cover more ground, maybe complete the objective faster. But you didn't. You kept us together, and we all made it out." Kate nodded. "That's the only way I know how to lead." By December, Task Force Sentinel had built a reputation. The unit that got sent when normal channels failed. The team that operated in the spaces between official policy and operational necessity. And at the center of that reputation was Alpha Team, Kate's team. On December 24th, 1 year exactly after the Christmas Eve mission, Colonel Briggs called Kate to his office. "I have something for you," he said, handing her a folder. Inside was a mission summary from the base she'd destroyed. The intelligence team had finally compiled everything what the base had been planning, what her actions had prevented. The enemy had been preparing a major offensive. 3 supply routes, multiple strike teams, targeting friendly positions across a 100-kilometer front. Kate's destruction of the forward operating base had disrupted the entire operation, buying time for friendly forces to reinforce and ultimately repel the attack. Casualty estimates suggested her actions had saved over 200 lives. "I thought you should know," Briggs said. "What you did that night mattered. More than just survival, more than revenge. It changed the entire operational picture." Kate read through the report carefully. Maps, intercepts, captured documents, all pointing to the same conclusion: her impossible mission had been exactly the right thing at exactly the right time. "Thank you, sir. There's something else." Briggs pulled out another folder. "The investigation into your team's ambush concluded. They found the leak." "Who was it?" "A logistics coordinator at battalion headquarters, selling information to the highest bidder. He's been arrested." Kate thought about that night. The perfect timing of the ambush, the overwhelming force, all because someone had sold them out for money. "Does Hayes know?" "I told him this morning. He wanted to apologize to you again, but I figured you'd had enough apologies." "Appreciated, sir." That evening, Kate walked the compound perimeter. Snow was falling, light flurries, nothing like the blizzard from last year. The base was decorated for Christmas. Lights strung between buildings, a tree in the common area. She found herself at the memorial wall, a granite slab engraved with names of Task Force Sentinel members who'd been killed in action. There weren't many names yet. The unit was young. Kate traced her fingers over the stone and thought about how close her name had come to being on a similar wall. If the bullet had hit different, if the cold had been worse, if she'd made one wrong decision during the infiltration. But she hadn't. She'd survived. And in surviving, she'd proven something that couldn't be taken back. Hayes found her there. "Figured I'd find you here." Just thinking. About last year? About everything. Last year, sniper school. Every time someone said I didn't belong, Kate turned to face him. "You know what I realized?" "What's that?" "They were right. I don't belong in their system. I don't fit their expectations. And that's not a weakness, it's an advantage. Because when the system fails, when everything goes according to the worst possible plan, people like me are the ones who find a way through." Hayes nodded slowly. "Is that why you took the team lead position? To prove that?" "No. I took it because I'm good at it." The proving part was finished on Christmas Eve. They stood in silence, watching snow fall on the memorial stones. "You know," Hayes said eventually, "that night changed me too. Made me question every decision I'd ever made, every assumption I'd held. I don't think I'm a better officer because of it, but I'm definitely a different one." "Different how?" "More careful about who I trust. More aware that sometimes the right answer isn't the obvious one. More willing to listen to people I used to dismiss." Kate appreciated the honesty. "That's growth, Captain." "I suppose it is." Hayes checked his watch. "There's a team gathering in the common room. Holiday thing. You coming?" "In a minute." He left her alone with her thoughts. Kate looked up at the falling snow and remembered another snowfall, heavier and more violent. She remembered the cold, the pain, the absolute certainty that she was going to die on that mountain. And she remembered the moment she decided to fight instead. That was the real gift of Christmas Eve. Not the medal, not the promotion, not even the survival.